Right, time to start a new video. And if you hear any noise, football's playing. So let's take an examination of anarcho-capitalism, and I would like to make a proposal to the anarcho-capitalists. So first off, what is anarcho-capitalism? Now, already you can see two parts of it. Anarchy, or the lack of a state, or specifically it means rule of none, but in practice for these people it means rule without a state. So basically, think of the United States government. No United States government in their perfect world would exist. And capitalism means they favor capitalist systems. Now, what this means in practice is free markets. See, there's no way to have a mixed market without a state. Because what the mixing is of a mixed market is you're mixing state control like a command economy with the free market that you'd see in a laissez-faire economy. And so, anarcho-capitalists do not believe in mixed markets. They believe in free markets. So, free markets, free trade, and apologies, it appears my dad was watching something, and so I heard it. Anyways, back to the topic. So they believe in free markets, free trade, but also free people. A firm belief of anarcho-capitalists is the idea of liberty based on natural rights. So basically bodily autonomy, private property, and free association. So if you were to ask an anarcho-capitalist, would you be fine with legalizing heroin? Most likely the answer would be yes. Now some who are thinking more strategically may say no, not yet, not until we set things up so that we can properly transition to anarcho-capitalism, because some of them may well argue that so long as the state is subsidizing healthcare, it could end poorly if we just immediately legalize heroin, but the goal in the end would still be to allow it. It does not mean they approve of it, quite the opposite for several. It just means, as far as they're concerned, your body, your property, your money, you choose to do what you want. And they consider taxation to be theft due to a combination of both autonomy and private property. Reasoning, and understandably so, that if something is a forced seizure, then ignoring who it is from, that is theft. If, for example, someone walked up and just took my pen, that is theft. It does not matter if that person was doing it under the command of the school I'm in, under the command of the government, over which all land is ruled, or just some person who wanted to steal my pen for whatever reason. And so that is why you hear the whole taxation is theft argument from them. Now, I do disagree with them on several points. Most notably, I do not believe anarcho-capitalism is remotely possible as of now. Theoretically, in the future, maybe. Definitely not now, though. Not with our debt crisis, and not with our systems set up the way they are. And so, as a general rule, I do not believe anarcho-capitalism can survive this world. It's too weak. Now, there are plenty of strong members of anarcho-capitalism, and the Libertarians would be more than willing to ally with them if they aren't already on board with a lot of this, because Libertarians tend fall into anarcho-capitalist or minarchists, basically minimal state, positions. But they just lack the numbers to practically maintain themselves. As a thought experiment, let's say the entire United States just ceased to exist, and a new place called Ancapistan formed with basically anarcho-capitalism as its lead way of running itself. So instead of a state, you'd see private cities. Basically imagine businesses running each city. Now, I'm not an anarcho-capitalist, I don't know all their theory, but it's a good way to imagine basically the same way you might see another business. Some maybe run as co-ops, others run like corporations, and others as family enterprises, but in the end, it is the same idea of someone owns the city and allows others to go inside it and manage it, with courts being used to determine the law through following natural rights. So if someone steals from you, yeah, there's still going to be law enforcement. It's just not going to be the state. It's going to be private, with courts set up to say, was this person's property? If yes, and you took it, then you get punished as a consequence of violating that person's rights. So basically, private cities, free courts, and private security. But here's the thing. How many people do you honestly think would accept such a world? Because how many people are honestly used to the state handling everything? You would then suddenly, if anarcho-capitalism were to just poof into existence, have to have everyone around who's used to the state regulating, managing, and handling a lot of things to suddenly have to figure it out themselves, or look for businesses that can manage it themselves. That's not going to be an easy transition. A lot of people are going to be lost in the transition of it from anarcho-capitalism, to anarcho-capitalism from the current status quo. And so you just don't have the numbers. I mean, even if we say 5% of the United States population supports this, which I do not believe that they would support such an immediate transition, that's 30 million people. Over 200 million would be willing to crush them, quite a few of which would be ex-military, and you just have crazy people who wouldn't care, and who could use the benefits of anarcho-capitalism, the increased GDP, wealth, and just general growth, to their own advantage to hurt the anarcho-capitalists. At the same time, outside threats, billions of them in terms of population, would be more than glad to crush this new state and take advantage of it to carve up spheres of influence. Plain and simply, I do not believe that 30 million people, or even 300 million if we're being generous, could hold off the world at once without extreme planning and a transition through more subtle means, because otherwise you have very real risks of internal infighting, which is a good way to see things collapse in on themselves. Because let's face it, I don't think LA is going to go along with anarcho-capitalism in practice, and Capistan is not going to be tolerated for them. So here's my proposal, though. Given this fact, what would anarcho-capitalists want to do honestly to ensure they gain power, and Capistan can be transitioned? Well, I mentioned a few things they need to handle. They need to get population on side. They need to get results to show the people that they can successfully manage things, and the transition needs to be gradual. It cannot just be immediate. You cannot just go from boom, modern US to boom, and Capistan. So instead, here's what I propose. An expansionist United States built on my ideas. First, you do the austerity measures. Pay off the debt. Work to go to the tax-free United States. And the reason you want to do this is because, well, if taxation is theft, the quicker you can end that, the better. And you can use the professional army of the United States to take over states and put in charge governments who will enforce natural rights, who will protect them, ensure free trade and free markets. The people may not be free in the anarcho-capitalist definition because they're still regulating and managing things to some extent because they need revenue, but by doing this, it allows for less. And if you see results, and people get used to the less regulations, the less taxes, and basically handling things on their own, then they're going to be more able to handle a transition to an anarcho-capitalist state of being. And so, step one is to essentially expand. Take over Canada, gain puppet states throughout the world, and protect liberty. Show that liberty is important, but also give them a taste of what liberty is. Convert their cultures if they don't believe in it, and expand the population in support of it. Then, let private cities be established. let the transition be slow. If, for example, some people want to go out and establish their own private city, not managed by the state, out in, say, rural Montana or whatever, let them. If they want to do it in Afghanistan, go ahead. But by having hegemony over the world and then protecting their liberties, you set up people to be used to that, and then they can gradually set up their own private cities, and the transition away from the state can occur over time until eventually the state can functionally be abolished, with what remains of, say, the United States government functioning as the bureaucrats or administrators of the capital, which is now its own private city, or conglomerate similar to several other businesses that may arise. And thus, you could see a gradual transition over time. It'd take a decent amount of time, decades I'd estimate, perhaps 1 to 2 generations. But it'd be an efficient way of getting anarcho-capitalism implemented into reality. Essentially, expand so you have the population, get results so that the people trust you and want to cooperate, and then let a gradual transition occur so that cultures can get more used to this and people can be more accepting. All the while you still have a military there just in case things go sideways. And as a private military becomes more and more viable, with them being set up, and the free courts being established, private security forming, and things over time transitioning further to that system, things become easier and easier. And thus, you get closer to that dream, that Anarcho-capitalist that they like to talk about. In practice, that would be the most efficient way to achieve their goals. Now, it may violate several of their principles, notably the expansion violating their beliefs in regards to aggression, because it's worth noting, because of their beliefs in natural rights, they do not tolerate aggression. As far as they are concerned, if you aggress upon another, their life is in the hands of the defender. The defender is entirely within the right to glass an aggressor because they violated their, basically, natural rights. I'd say social contract, but it's really more to them tied to natural rights and the idea of what is yours. And so they have a non-aggression principle, often called the NAP, because it's simpler. And thus, the idea of going around basically colonizing or engaging in imperialism throughout the globe is not something they're typically fans of. But in practice, that's basically what you need in order to achieve any ideology that requires few enemies. Because the moment you allow an enemy to build up outside of you is the moment you allow someone to surpass you. And that isn't a good thing. You either must handle them or neutralize them. There's no real other way to do it, especially in the case of anarcho-capitalism, where your cities could very well end up getting taken out one by one if they don't form up in time. LA, if it became a free city, would take several hours to reinforce Peking if it became a free city. And in that time, some warlord out in Manchuria may well have consolidated a large territory and taken it over before they even had a chance to respond. So you need to get rid of the threats first. Clear the board, so to speak, so that the new change can take place without resorting to mass violence. Internal violence, that is, at least. But that's what is needed. If anarcho-capitalists wish to disagree, say, Mentis Wave, I understand you are Hoppian, or Taxed Brass, go on ahead. I would love to debate such a thing. But that is essentially my proposal. Expand across the globe, protect liberty, and eventually abolish taxation across many states, and then let private cities gradually establish themselves with their own free courts and private security, until eventually the states are no longer needed and can be transitioned out of. And frankly, if I'm being honest, I'd rather have anarcho-capitalists as my opposition than the modern liberals. They're more in touch with reality. That'll be all. Thank you for watching.